Hello everyone, Zua here. Today I will be explaining how to build a full-stack web application from scratch using NodeJS and HTML. In this project, we will be using the Express.js library along with the Axios HTTP library. It will encompass everything from backend routing to front-end API integration. We will also be focusing on CRUD, create, read, update, and delete functionality with our REST API. All in all, this Messenger app project will demonstrate how REST APIs are built and used and how they are integral to the internet's interconnectedness as a whole. So how would we build a project like this? For starters, let's understand how data flows through the web. Suppose we have a client. Now this client can be your phone or your computer, but let's say the client wants to access a website or service, like Google. The client will have to send a request to the server that hosts the service in question. The server, in response to the initial request, then sends back a response that contains data the client will find useful. Now let's apply this concept to our project. The client represents our front-end HTML website, and the server represents our back-end API web server. Suppose a client wants to get all messages posted by users of this application. The client will send a GET request to the server, and the server will send back a response containing the data for all messages. So let's get started with this project. So first off, we're going to need to install a couple things. So this project, we're going to be using Node.js. If you don't have Node installed, nodejs.org, and just download the current version. I'll put this link in the description. And then the other tool we're going to use is Postman. This is good for API development, and we will be using it in this project. Postman.com/downloads, and I'll put these in the description. Also, the code that we're going to use is already pre-written. It's on this repository. I will be putting this in the description also. So now that that's out of the way, let's start off our directory. Let's set up our project directory. So to do this, just create a folder. I'm going to call it project. And now that that is made, this is where we're going to put our project. So I'm going to create two folders, one called client, the other one called server, and pretty much our client will have one file. We're just gonna call it index.html. If you are not able to create files like that, you can go here to view and then click on file name extensions for you to be able to like right click new and have these extensions at the end. So just do that. And we're also going to need a couple more files in here, but for now let's just set up the server. So to do this, to set up the server, we're gonna open up command prompt. So to do this, I'm just gonna cmd here, and let's set up the command prompt. So what we want to do, or set up the project. So to do this, we've got an npm init, and so this will just set up a node, what's it called, package.json. And now we're able to install node packages. So npm install, we're going to be installing a couple things. We're going to be using Express, so npm install Express, and then body parser, and you'll see what these do later on, but let's just download the things we need. And then one more called NodeJSON-DB. This package will pretty much be our pseudo database. We're not going to be using Mongo or SQL or anything. We're just going to be using a file just for the sake of this is strictly API development. We're not going to be using database. Maybe in a future video I could use a database, but for now we're just going to be using JSON file as our database. We're going to be using these three. Once you're done, press enter, let these install, and once that is done, that's all you need pretty much. Well, yeah, so once that's done, we have to create, I'm going to open this in VS Code. You can use whatever code editor you want. I'm going to create a file here in the server folder called index.js, and in here what we're going to want to do is pretty much have the code that runs like the API web server, because we are on the server folder, so anything server related will be inside the server folder. So let's use let's just get this running real quick. So const express is equal to require express. And then what we want to do is, let me zoom this in just a little bit. And we're also gonna have we're gonna be using path. So const path is equal to require path. Oops. Const body parser is equal to require body parser. And that's all we're gonna use for now. We're gonna have a const app is equal to express, and const port is equal to 5000. I'm going to be using 5000 for this video, and let's listen on port 5000. So we're just going to throw that in here, and then call callback function here, and pretty much this is just going to say console.log. So our backend, if I can write this, backend is listening on port, on port, colon, and then port. And so if I were to run this right now, I should do like node index or just node dot. You could see the backend is listening on port 5000, so it's listening on that port. We don't have anything set up for it. That's fine. We just set up the main file. So now that that file is working, let's set up the rest of the directory. So I'll just do it here. So we have one folder in here called routing, routing. One folder called routing. We'll have a JSON file, not inside routing. I'll move it after. So database.json. This will be hosting all of our data for this project, and we'll apply that later. We're going to create one file called db.js. This will be database related, and what else is there? So let's go into the routing now, and I'm going to create a couple folders here, or just two actually. Author, so anything author related we will just put in that folder. One more folder called message. Anything message related we'll put in that folder. And yeah, there we go, just like that. So two subfolders, and then inside of routing we're gonna have kind of author.js. That'll be our router file, and another file we're gonna need is message.js, which will be our message router. And inside of these folders we'll have the actions related to it, but for now, actually we can write that. We'll also have one more file called middleware.js, and another file called index.js. This will be like our main API folder, and this index.js file will house all of our we'll combine kind of all the routers together into one, and then we'll put it in an API route all in one. So that's what that file will be for. And let's go into our author folder. I'm going to create a file called index.js, and this will be the author related actions. So there's only one author related action, and another inside the message folder we're going to have a couple files here called create.js. So message create, so this will be related to creating a message. Let's create another file called edit.js, and this file will be related to editing messages. And one more, index.js. This will be for viewing it'll be for viewing messages altogether. So this index file will just be it won't be combining them, it'll just be for viewing. I should have named it better, but it's fine. And then this one will be also for the author related actions. So this will be like getting authors that have written on the site, and so we'll have that logic once we write that out. Okay, so now that we've finished the server file structure, we're gonna be let's finish up with the client related file structure. It's not that sophisticated. We're just gonna go, I'm gonna X out of this. We're gonna go into our client, and in here we have one file called index.html. This will be our main user interface, and in here I'm just gonna create a couple files here. One will be called api.js, and then one other one or two other more utils.js. This will have our utilities for our front end. One more called actions.js, and this will be executing actions based on the state of the index file. And so we pretty much set up our project directory. We have our client. This is all for what the user is going to see, and then our server. This is what the user is going to interact with, but they're not going to be able to see it, so to speak. And so we have that set up. So now all we have to do is start coding. Let's start actually programming. So we're going to be doing the server first. And so let's go to our index or server / index.js file, and let's code in here. So we got to set up the we'll set up the linking to the front end. So what we're going to do for that is we're going to do app.use, and this is going to allow us to use like middlewares and stuff. But here we're going to pass in express.static, and then we're going to also pass in path.join, and then __, so that's 2 underscores right there, __ dir name, and then we're also going to go back one directory to client. And so what this is going to do is, this is pretty much, this right here kind of gives us the path to this client folder, and in here it allows us to have this index.html and its other JavaScript files. And so this just kind of makes that public and allows it to be like served. And so the express.static, it's just like it says it right here, this is a built-in middleware function. It serves static files and is based on serve static. So this just allows us to serve our client on this same web server. And so now let's use another middleware. So we're going to do app.use, and we're going to do body parser, and then .url encoded, and then have extended is true. So this just allows us to have allows the user to pass in or to do requests and be able to parse the body, and you'll see what that does later on once we set that up. So this just makes it easier for requests to get parsed through our server from the client. And so let's create our API router. So we're going to do app.use, and we're going to give it /API, so our web server /API, and then here we're gonna just pass in routing right now. And so what is routing? We haven't even defined that, so I'm gonna go here and just define routing. So so this file routing is equal to require, and we're gonna go to /routing. And so if we go in this folder, we have an index.js, and in here this is where our main routing is going to go. And so let's start with that. So first let's get the router. So Express has a function that allows us to kind of compile routes together really easily. It's pretty nice. So what you just have to do is like .router, just like so. And then let's have let's do router.use / let me make this better. Okay, /message, and so we'll have these routes /message, so /API / so this kind of evaluates to HTTP : localhost 5000 /API /message, and so those routes will be whatever message has, and we'll pass in the function here. So what we're gonna do is, it's just like app.use, so we throw in our routing. So here, let's first export the router. So module.exports is equal to router. And so if we were to run this, all the routing within this file will be thrown in here as like it'll be like as a middleware, but it'll be through just this route. And so we have router.use, and then so let's have message, and then have const message is equal to, because we have message router, a message router too, we just haven't got to programming it. We have that directory set up though, so /messages, and so that's not right, message. And so we have this folder right here. So our index, this is the message router, and so we'll set that up later. It's getting kind of confusing, apologize, but bear with me here. So, and then we have another one, const author require dot slash author, and so not the JavaScript file, or actually, yeah, no, the JavaScript file. Yeah, okay, so I was actually wrong. I meant to, this is the JavaScript file itself, this message.js. I should have, yeah, not the folder, because if I were to reference a folder, it'd be like this. But we just want this JavaScript file, and this will be the router. And so will this be the router, and this, and so we'll do the programming for that. And so router.use, I also want to have routes associated to authors, so slash author, and then we have that with author, and then just like that. And this one would evaluate, or these requests would go to slash API slash author, because here we have, it says slash author, but remember this router is being exported over here and being used into slash API. So in essence, this is what that is doing. And we'll have another router within this file when we get to it, but let's also apply a middleware. And so what a middleware is, kind of like I explained earlier, it just kind of lets you have, it allows for, it's mainly used for authentication purposes, if you're not authenticated to go through routes, but I'll just kind of demonstrate a simple use case for middlewares, and you'll see kind of how it works. So I'm going to have const middleware is equal to require, and we're going to do dot slash routing slash middleware, and then what's it called, and then so we can just throw in middleware right here. So it has to be before the routing, because, and you'll see why. So you can have multiple, it's just right before middleware, you'll see. So let's program this now. So what we want to do is do module.exports is equal to rec res, and then next. So you might have seen res and rec. So rec stands for request, res stands for response, and this is like you're giving the client information back, like client actions, res, and then rec stands for like request, so this is what the client is giving you, and then next is kind of like the middleware functionality. So this just allows us to like go to the next route, something like that. And then so since we have a next here, if whatever authentication we have working, like we call next, then it'll go on to this file. And so and then if it didn't work, then it would just stop right there. It wouldn't go to the next route. So I'll show you what the next does. So that's essentially, if we were to run this, it would do nothing, but it would work. It would allow us to go on to the next route using this middleware. But let's use some of the middleware functionality. So let's just console log every request that happens through slash API. So to do that, it has to be, we just do console.log, and then we'll do like we'll format it like nicely. We'll do new date dot to local string, or to local string, like that, just so it formats nicely. You'll see what that outputs later on. And then I want to log the rec.method, and so this is just the method. So like get, post, put, that's what this variable would be. And then from, we'll say rec.ip, so that's like the user, the IP address of the user, and then rec.path, so to rec.path, and so this is like where they're trying to go, what route they're trying to access. And so that'll just make it nice, and you'll be able to see it on the log once we run it. So we have that set up now. I guess we can start programming the message. And so, or actually we can do the database first. So we're going to be using NodeJS DB. So I'm not going to be using Mongo or SQL or whatever, just because I'm kind of focusing on this kind of project as more data flow oriented, not really on the storage side. So I'm just going to be using a JSON database, though you can use Mongo or whatever. I just want to keep our focus on the actual API, not the storage side of things. Just yeah. So we're gonna do JSON DB, then require, and so we already installed this NodeJS DB, so it should work. And then let's create a variable of our DB is equal to new JSON DB, and then we're just gonna use that database.json, and just like that. And then we also want to export it because we're going to use it later on in other files. So module.exports is equal to db, just like that. And then let's go into this. Let's actually create this. So for this project, I'm just going to have an object message, and then this is just an empty array, or I think it should be messages. Yeah, just plural, just for consistency's sake. And that's pretty much it for the database. Now we can actually start. Let's create the messages router. And so to do that, we're gonna have const create, and so now we're gonna link these files together. Require ./messages or message/create. So this will be the create route. Const edit is equal to require ./message/edit. Const view is equal to require ./message/ and so this will just be the index file, and so I'm just going to leave it slash, just like that. Const router is equal to require, so like before, require express.router, just like that. And I'm just going to export this. Module.exports is equal to router. And so now let's set our routes. So the first route, what we're going to want to do, I'm going to open up Postman real quick. Okay, so I have the Postman. If you don't have Postman, download it. I think I already mentioned it earlier. It's pretty nice for API developers. So I created a collection here, so I just right click, or this plus button. And so if you want this collection, it's on the repo. It's a JSON file. You just have to import it by just pressing this button and then uploading that JSON file. So if you do, you'd get this collection right here, and so this collection, and then this has all the routes we're gonna use and create. So pretty much I just have one variable here called URL, and this just points to our localhost 5000/API. So this is just our API kind of base URL. And so let's look at the messages routes that I have planned. So we're gonna have a post request for create message, get all messages, that's a get request, get specific message, that's a get request, put, that's for edit message, and then delete for deleting messages. So let's actually do that now. And so what we want to do is we have the router, so router.post/create. So we can look right here. This is /message/create. So since we're already in this router, because remember we used where is it? Right here. So since we're in /message already, and then this file containing over here, since we're over here now, it just be, this would be /message or HTTPS or HTTP localhost 5000/API/message/create. So that's what this goes to, because we have that router set up. So it's kind of a router inside of a router, I think it's just something like that. And so what's it called? So now we just have the /message/create, and then throw in that create here, and then in these files we'll set these files up after we set up the router. So we have another one. So all routes relating to creating a post will be inside. We'll execute from this file just once we set that up, but the post will execute this function. And so the next one we have is a put request. So router.put, and then we'll have it stay to just here and :ID. So if we look over here in the put request, we have /message, so we're inside the parent router, and then /some hash. So this is our ID. And so since this is changing, this isn't static, we put this : ID, and this stands for our what's it called, parameters, path parameters, not a query parameters. Query parameters are like this. You can see question mark author is equal to Zua. That's a query parameter, and we'll get into that once we actually start routing or writing the routes for this. So that's just how we have like dynamic paths. And so this will be kind of like let me write this out. So message slash your ID here, and so and this would be a put. This would only work when you do a put request. This would only work if you do a post request. And I should have mentioned that over in the API. And so actually I don't need to, because use uses, so let's say this was get. This would only work for get requests, I think. I haven't actually tried it out. But use allows you to use like all the routes that you have defined in this message file. And so since we have an amalgam of all the different kinds of routes, like put, post, or types of request, we can just use, and that'll work for our sake. And so I'm going to do router dot, I'm going to finish this up, so router dot delete. So this is a delete request right here, and this is similar to the other one. It's we have an ID, and then query parameters. Query parameters you don't need to define, but I'll show you how to parse them after. So it'll be the same thing, slash ID, colon ID, and then we're going to put in, since we don't have a delete file, we're just going to put it with the edit file, and we're going to write that functionality in that same file, which is fine. And we're going to have the get routes, so router dot get colon ID, so this will get a specific route, just intuitively speaking, and then this will be view, and then we have another one that is just at the slash, so this would be like what's it called, so I'll just copy this, so it'll be get and like this URL, just like this. Okay, and then we have our slash message slash your ID here, and it'll get a specific message with that ID, so that's what we're aiming for. And then this one would just be slash message, and so this would give, ideally this would give us all the messages, just how I have this designed. And so that's how we're gonna aim off that. And so you can notice we have the same things, so it's just a condition to check in the same file, like if there's an ID provided, then we're gonna do give all messages or just give a specific message. And so that's pretty much it for this file. And so now we can work on the create route. And so let's do that. So what we're gonna want to do is go into create, and I'm gonna get the database file that we got. So db is equal to require, and so that one file that we made, I'm gonna go back one directory and then back another directory, that db.js or db.js file. We're just taking that, and we're gonna be using that. And we're also gonna be using another library. It's built into NodeJS now, so you don't need to install it. Crypto, did I spell that right? Yes, hopefully. And then this would be from the crypto library, and so this will just allow us to hash things to give us like unique IDs. And so yeah, so now let's actually write this route. So module.exports is equal to an arrow function with rec and res. So rec stands for request, and then res is for response. And so now you can see back here, so slash create is going to execute this JS file, and so now we have that binded, and so now we can write the code. So we need a couple things. If we look into Postman, to create a message, we have an author query parameter and then a value associated with that. And so to do that, since it's a query parameter, all we need to do is just to get those kinds of values, we do const author is equal to rec.query.author. And so this would be like URL colon 5000. I'm not going to type it out anymore. Actually, I'll type in the HTTP. So URL 5000. Okay, I might as well just type it out. 5000 slash API slash or message slash create. And then if we want to create, we need, so to use the query parameters, this would be like author is equal to Zua. And so question mark author equals Zua. This value right here, this const author, would output Zua. because we're taking rec.query. This would be a dictionary or object containing the thing or the another key of author, and then it returns the value Zua. And so we're also gonna have another one. So content. So to create a what's it called? Create a message. I'm gonna go over here, see where the body is, and so what we're doing is we're encoding the form into the body of the request, just so it keeps it like not in the query parameters. Because if you were to have like, you know, it through here and like say this is my message, this URL is just gonna get really long, and it's also, I'm just thinking about it, I don't think it's a good practice to have it, because then it's exposing your URL and someone could see that. And so we're just going to encode it in our body, in the body of the request. So to do that, we just did the content is equal to rec.body.content. And so since we have our thing www form URL encoded, that's that thing that we did in the beginning. This right here, this line allows us to do rec.body.content and then through the form URL encoded. So it's that just makes it nice. And so now let's have just a condition to check if they're provided, because we need both for this to work. So if there are none of either, then we'll do res.status, and we're gonna send them a 400 status. So 400 status is a bad request. There's probably a list you could find on Google, just HTTP status codes, and then 400 is a bad request. So just remember that. And so we're just going to send them an error too, saying error, please provide content and an author name. And so yeah, we're just going to send them that error along with the 400 status. And so that's a bad request. And then we also want to stop the code from further execution, so just put a return there. And yeah, so now let's assume that now they have that. So we're gonna have let's assume that they have both parameters needed for this request to go forward. I'm gonna create a hash, a unique hash. So I'm gonna do crypto.create hash. I'm just using SHA-256. This doesn't really matter. This is just to make like a unique ID for each message. And so I'm gonna hash it with the rec.ip. So, and then the date.now, which is the time in milliseconds. And we also need to make this a string. So do .toString. And this is kind of messy right now, so I'll just kind of throw that here. And let me space this out for you guys. Okay, and then we're gonna throw in the author name too. Why not? And you could just keep hashing a ton of stuff to make it even more, but it doesn't really matter. So digest. We're gonna put this in hex, and this hash variable will be what we want when we're putting this in our database as our ID. And in Mongo, it's like kind of like the object ID. It's the unique number or the unique value that allows you to access an individual document. And so that's just kind of our makeshift way of emulating that, even though it's not. So let's have another thing, an object called message. And so this is what's going to go in the database. So timestamp. So we're going to timestamp each request. And so remember, all this code is going to run every time /message/create as a post request happens. If it was a get request and we're at /message/create, nothing's going to happen because we have this binded to a post, not a get. If it was get and we did a get and we did it through there, then that'd be a separate story. But we're just using post. And so every time someone posts to this endpoint, this code is going to run. And so let's timestamp when this happens, or when someone creates this message. So I'm just going to do to_locale string just to make it readable as our timestamp. And then IP, we're going to log their IP too. ID, this is our unique number, so that's our hash. And what else is there? Edited, and so we're gonna have it edited initially as false, but let's say like through this route, once we have that logic set up, if they want to edit some sort of message, then they'll use this that put request, and so then we'll change this variable to true, but that's later on. But initially, if they create a new message, obviously it's not edited at first, and so that's just there. And then we also want to throw in the author name and then the content, and yeah, that's pretty much it for that. And so now let's console.log, let's say author, and so that's like the author's name has created a post, so like a message, whatever. And db, so now we're going to use our db here, our sudo db.push, and so this is just like the weird way how they do it. So /message /messages, and then that's an array. And so if you don't get it, it's kind of just like taking this key right here. It sees that it's an array, and so that's what that kind of two brackets are for. And then we're just going to push that in that. And so I'll push that message object, and we're going to override. I think you need that true. What does it say? Override. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. We'll just put that there just because I had it. And then if everything all went well, we'll do res.status 200. And then we'll send back the message that we got, or at least the message object that they created, and just to show them that it works. 200 means good, okay, like the request went well. And so that's pretty much it for the create route. So if we were to run this, I'm just gonna right now, let's just keep going. So if we go to our edit, or we can do view right now. Or actually, screw it. We'll just do edit. This one's a long one. So what we're gonna do here is this file is going to make us edit. So this will be the put request. So put at http://localhost:5000/message or /API/message/ let me check. I actually kind of forgot. Let's see. So put, okay, yeah, it's a message ID and then their author, and so yeah, message ID. We'll just kind of put that there like that, and then author is equal to author name. And the reason why we're redefining it, because technically all we need is a message ID. I'm just using author name as a way to authenticate. Like, let's say someone else's name, they try editing a post from a different person. We're just gonna like not let that happen. It's just kind of a weird way to have authentication. I didn't want to deal with authentication in this video because I could go on for hours about that. It's a whole separate topic. So I'm just using like having the same author name as a way to kind of authenticate, and you'll see what I mean if that doesn't make sense. So I'm just gonna have that one variable const db is equal to require .. get the db file, and then module.export is equal to res arrow function, just like previously. And then what we're gonna want to do is let's just have a variable called data is equal to db.get data, and so this just allows it. So it's gonna take that db file, the JSON file, go to /message, and this isn't like a route or anything. This is just how that library was made. That NodeJS DB library is made. It just allows us to go to the message right here, if I can find it right here. Like, it's weird, just bear with me, this doesn't really matter. And so let's have what this is gonna do is this is gonna like take, this is like a put request for edit message. This is gonna make us like edit a specific message if the IP is the same. So that's just like our way to, if the IP is the same and so is the author name, if both of those conditions are met, then we can authenticate this response, even though it's like not really authentication. I'm just doing that as a way so that like random people can't do it, even though they could if they're on the same network. But again, I'm not trying to get into authentication. So let's first find the message they're talking about. So to get this message ID that I was talking about, which is like technically it'd just be this, if right, not here, right here. So nope, not right here actually, sorry, right here. So you can see right here we have the put :/ID. So to get this dynamic value, what we want to do is first let's find the message they're talking about. So const message is equal to data.find, and so that's a function that comes with the arrays, or yeah, it comes with arrays by default in JavaScript. So we're just going to do if message.id is equal to rec.params.id, and so that's that value. So it's not query, because if we put query, then this would be like query is equal to whatever, and then that value would be this value, but we don't want it. We want the dynamic slash value, kind of the path value. And so since I want that, I'm going to do rec.params, and so that takes that value instead of like this, and so it just doesn't let me, or just so I don't have to, like, just makes it consistent. And so that is a function that will find an object, or it'll find our object through an array. And so if there is no message, that it was not able to find one, then what we're going to want to do is res.status 404. I'm sure many of you know that just means not found, 404 not found. And then we're going to send an error back saying message was not found with that ID. Okay, and then we don't want the code to execute further. And so, okay, so let's say the message was found now. So now we can do what I was saying earlier. If the response is authenticated, or like kind of quote unquote authenticated, and to do that, I'm just going to do like rec.ip is equal to message.ip. And so remember, message, this is just gonna be like it'll be like, where is it? It'll return this. It'll return an object, because that's what the find does. And so it'll return the object. So if we find one, then it'll return that object containing like timestamp. What else? There was like and more importantly, that a hash ID, and then whatever. So that's what this message variable is. It's an object. And so if it's equal to that same IP that it was originally posted on, and the rec.query.author, remember this value right here, the question mark author, or just the author is equal to whatever, if that is equal to message.author. And so that's that object. If it has its same attributes, then we're going to execute this code. Otherwise, or yeah, we're going to authenticate this. So otherwise, okay, so in this code right here is what we're going to actually do the editing logic. Otherwise, we're just going to do res.status 401. And so 401 HTTP code is I believe it's unauthorized, and it's an unauthorized response, so we'll give the client back an unauthorized response, and we're sending back JSON with the error saying you are not authentic, or yeah, I'll just say you're not authorized to perform this action. That's it, and that's all I'm gonna put. And so let's say that didn't happen. You don't even need to return. It's fine. Okay, so let's say it does happen. So remember, we have two places where we call edit. And so let's say this was a delete request. Since we want to edit, we have no way to like handle it. So let's actually find a way to handle it by using a switch case statement. So I have a switch here. And so to know whether it's a delete request or a put request, remember put will be for like actually editing a specific post, but delete request will be for deleting a post. And so since it's with the same file, we have to handle it in this file. So to find out what way what like method or yeah, what request type we're using. We're just gonna do rec.method, and so rec.method evaluates to like put, post, get, whatever. And so if it was put, for instance, then this will be our editing logic. Edit a specific post, and then let's say it was we don't have a default case, so I'll just get rid of that. And then case, if we want it to be delete, then our delete logic will be here. I'll just put it right here. Delete logic here. So, or just delete post here. Okay, and so that'll be that logic, and then you need a break here. And so here in this code, the put is where we're gonna actually have our logic for editing. So let's say they have content, so rec.body.content. If there is content that they gave us to edit with, so if I'm in this edit request body, the way I have it set up is that there's just like the create request, there's a what's it called, a body with content key and then the value of whatever, and it's inside the body. If that exists in this put request, then we're gonna continue on. And so otherwise, like if they didn't give us any, we'll just give them like do I have a 404? No. Okay, I'll just write it again. Res.status. It was a bad response. If they didn't give us everything we need, then we're just gonna say 400 stands for bad response. So error, and then please provide content to update post with. So this happens, this will get triggered if that doesn't happen. And so I guess I didn't even need that, but yeah, so if that doesn't exist, or if it doesn't come, then we'll give them this error right here. And so let's say they did give us that. So now what we want to do is iterate through I'm sure there's a better way of what's it called, like iterating or editing through an object, but this is just what I did. So to do this, to edit a specific object within an array of objects, what I want to do is I'm just going to iterate let I is equal to 0, I is less than data.length, then I plus plus. And so we're iterating through here. So here we're just going to find the object that we're looking for, that we're trying to edit. So if data of I dot ID, and so remember data, this data variable comes from here. It's the db.getData, and so this evaluates to that array of messages. So this will have an array of like these things, and so there'll be like multiple of them. And so we're just gonna find the one we're looking for. So if data of I, so that object dot ID is equal to the rec.params.id, that's the same logic here applies. So if we're in that, if we're looking for it and we found it, then data of I.content is equal to rec.body.content, because now we're just setting, or we're resetting it to the new post, or to the new content that the user provided, rather than the old one. We're just kind of, we're resetting it just like I just said. And so this updates the content. And so we're also going to update the timestamp. Data of I.timestamp is equal to new date.to local string. And then data of I.edited. Remember that initial variable is initially false. Edited is initially false, but since they edited now, we're going to set it to true. And console, we'll just console.log. We'll say like message.author has edited their post, and just like that. And so we'll also send back res.status 200, it all went well, JSON, and we'll send back the new object that was changed. And so now it's changed, but we have to save it to the JSON file. So after that happens, we're gonna do db.push/messages. So we're not actually pushing it to that array. We're just gonna reset it to our current, or to like the entire data JSON thing. Because remember, data is just that array, or is that array of objects. So we're just going to completely reset the entire array with that new edited object. And so to do that, I'm just going to, it's just this. So this just updates previous, or updates with new values changed. Okay, and so that would do, that would work for editing. That works all good. And so let's do the delete case here. And so remember app router.delete. So it's the same logic. It's just now we do our logic here. So const, let's look at the object index. Just the way I did it is I spliced the array. I'm sure there are better ways of doing this. I'm not that experienced, so I just did it this way. So object index, we're going to find the index that they're looking for or that they're trying to delete in the index of the array. So to do that, we're just going to do data.findIndex. This is a JS native function that comes with arrays too. And let's check if message.id is equal to rec.params.id. And yeah, so this will return that index that this condition is true, and so the parameters that they provided is equal to the message. So whatever iteration of their ID, whatever that is equal to, it'll return that index. And so now let's delete the index, or let's delete the value that exists at that index. So to do that, I'm going to do const deleted is equal to data.splice, and so this will get rid of it using object index and 1. This is just a way to delete something from an array at a specific index. And then now we want to replace that data, so we'll do db.push and in/messages, or I have to be doing /messages, yeah, because that's, remember over here, I could put this down here. You can see it's message. I was writing it like this, but we're just going to keep it consistent here. And so /messages/ did I change it? Yeah, so we're just going to replace it with that data. And then we're also just going to send them res.status 200 that it worked. 200 means works. We're also sending back the deleted object that they just deleted. And then we'll also say console.log message.author has deleted their post. And so yeah, so now this whole file should be done, the editing routes. So we pretty much, to sum up what we did, we have where is it? So if I can just, yeah, right here. So we have our edit. We take a specific parameter, and if they have a parameter, or yeah, if they have a parameter, if it doesn't exist, if this is like null, then it will, it will never find one because all IDs aren't null. And so yeah, so if it's null, then you'd get a 404 and it'd say, message was not found. If we did find a message, a specific message ID, and the IP of the author, of the new author, or I guess the client, is the same as the previous author of that message, and the author name is the same as the author of the previous message. Remember, this is just kind of a weird way of authenticating. It's not really a conventional way. I avoided doing it, avoided going into authentication, so bear with me. And then if we then we check if it's either a put request or a delete request, because remember we have our message right here, so we have two edits, and so this just checks if it's either a put or a delete. If it's a put, then we're going to check if there's content to replace the old message with, which is here in the body of this request. We're going to iterate and then set the new values correspondingly, and send back the new thing that they just updated and update the old data just like that. And then if it's a delete, we're going to find the index, delete it, and then update it, the old data with it, and send back the deleted object yeah, send back the deleted object, and if that didn't happen, the authorization, then we'd send them back an unauthorized response code. So that's pretty much it for the edit routes. Okay, so we pretty much just finished the edit messages and creating messages. So now and also deleting messages. And now let's figure out how to get messages. So I have this file here in routing server /routing/message, and then the index of this. This pretty much has the this, what's it called? If we look into our message router, you can see. Can I drag this? I can't because I don't have anything else open. But here you can see. So you can see right here. Our get goes to view, this view variable, and so that's this index file right here. And so everything, if we run a get request to these endpoints, then this code will run this right here. So let's actually write this. So module.exports is equal to res, and that's equal to an arrow function. And we're gonna have we need to get our database. So const db is equal to require // db, and so so that gets our database JSON file. And so let's get that data because we're actually just gonna send it back to the client. So const data is equal to db.getData /messages. And so that just gives us that array. And let's see if they gave us a what's it called, if they didn't give us rec.params.id. Remember, that's right here. If they didn't give us, then it'll be like this endpoint, and if they did give us one, it'll be this endpoint. So let's write if they didn't give us a params.id, which is like that dynamic slash thing, the path, like right here after message. So if they didn't give us one, then what we're gonna do is we're gonna do res.status200. It's fine that they didn't give us one, but we're just gonna send back all messages in the database. So JSON of data, because this right here, this data will just be giving us this array of messages. So it'll just give us. We'll send back data, which is just the array of messages. So data is the array of messages from database.json. So actually, I should probably put that over here. So and then if they did that, then we'll also return because we don't want a further code to execute. But let's say they did provide us a specific parameter ID, and so like a specific message ID. We're going to do the same logic we did in edit message. We're going to find the message, and so I'm just going to copy this. We're going to find the message that they're talking about using data.find, and let's say if there is no message, so if that message ID doesn't exist in the first place, then res.status 404, 404 not found, we're going to send back JSON with the error saying message was not found with that ID. I believe we have a very similar, error that we wrote earlier, and then we'll just return. We'll stop further code execution. Let's say that message does exist, then we'll do res.status200, everything is all good, JSON. We'll send back the message. And so remember, message is just the object that we find within that array of messages. And so we have our message router entirely set up now. And so now let's set up our author. Let's first look at Postman. So get all messages. Remember, this is just /API/message, and so this will give us all the messages. This will give us a specific message with a hash, and that's the only input that we need from the user. And so let's actually I believe we can run this now. Actually, first of all, let's set up the author router. And so I'm in author.js over here, and then here is the code we're going to be writing. So it'll be over here, and then I'll move this down here. So down here is our routers. And so let's create our router. So const router is equal to, just like before, require express dot router. Const view is equal to require, and so this will be just taking, it'll just be like message, so it'll just be like this, but we're gonna have it for viewing like authors, so or getting data based on author, and you'll see what I mean. So ./author, and then we want the index, not this file itself, so it'll be just like that. And so we're gonna do router.get, because if we look here, we have two routes relating to authors, and so we have one called get all authors, and so this will get all the authors that have posted on the site at this route, so /API/author, and then another one called get entries by author, so this will take /API/author/ the param ID, and that'll be a name, because you can see it's just a name here, and that's just how I designed it, and so we're just going to stick with that convention. And so we have the slash, so that'll just be get all authors if they didn't provide us a rec.params kind of deal. So just like what we did with message viewing, it'll be kind of analogous to that. So router.get, these are both get, and then we have one called :name. So before it was ID, we're just using name, and instead this will be like rec.params.name instead of ID. Just so like you can see it, and we'll also pass it in the view variable. And so one more thing, we have to export it, so module.exports is equal to router, just like that. And so now we've exported that functionality to this file, and so now this file is our main view file. And so what we want to do is first let's get our database. Const db is equal to require ././db. And then let's do the data thing that we did earlier. Require, no, we're not requiring, db.getData /messages, and module.exports is equal to rec and res, and also move that in here. Okay, and so let's say they don't give us a name, or actually no, yeah, so we'll do that after. So we need that data. So yeah, so remember, if they don't provide us a name, so if they don't give us this, then it's going to run this. I mean, it's the same thing, but we have to handle it here. And so if they don't provide us a name, rec.params.name, remember, just like this, because it's a :name. If they don't give that to us, then we're going to just send back all the authors instead of a specific author, specific post by authors, which is the other part of this file. So const authors is equal to db dot, actually I don't need to do that because I have data dot map and message, then each there we'll just put this in an array full of the authors. And so what this does is just kind of takes in each object within that array, within the messages array, and just take the author string and just put this in an array. So this will be evaluated to, like, let's say, like, you know, Zua or Z, just like that. This will output to an array full of the author names. And then we also want to send that back. So res.status 200, so everything went good, JSON. So let's say, like, so what this does is it takes all of the messages we have. So that'll be like, I'll try to write this out here. So messages is like an array of messages. So like timestamp that's in there, ID, and I believe author. Yeah, author. And so, like, I mean, there's more too. So so that'll be like, it'll have these attributes just like them. They'll all be very similar, just have different values. And so what we want is, we want to take the author within each. So that's what this map does right here. It takes the author and puts it in an array. Now the problem is, if we just want all the authors, we're gonna have duplicates in case, you know, because some people might post more than once, and so you'd have duplicates in that array. So here's just a way of getting rid of those duplicates. I'll leave that there actually. Or yeah, this would actually be data, because that's what that is. Okay, so to remove the duplicates, we're just going to have an array and then 3 dots, and put this in a set, hash set, just to get rid of the duplicates, and then authors, we throw in authors, and just like that, that gets rid of duplicates, and then we return, everything's all good. But let's say they give us a specific author and we want to give the messages based on, or like filter by messages, and so we'll get all the data by those, or by that specific author. So what we're going to want to do is get messages, so const messages is equal to data.filter. We want to get all those messages by that author, so message.author is equal to rec.params.name, and so we're taking that value here, and so if it's equal to that, then we'll just give that array back, and so this would return an array full when this condition is met through iteration. And so let's say nothing was found, messages.length, so if the length of that array is equal to 0, then we'll do res.status 404, so it was not found, JSON error. We'll give them an error saying no messages were found from this author, just like that. I mean, honestly, you could just send back an empty array, so like you could just send back messages, because what essentially res.status 200.messages, oh no, hold on, JSON of messages, that's eventually what we're just going to send back. You could just send, you don't need this condition. I just did it just to, I guess, have it. We also need to return this. So yeah, so now that's set up. We have the author router pretty much set up. Okay, so let's actually run this server now. So I'm just going to hit F10 and run it through the console here, and yeah, so let's run this now. So I'm gonna do, where are we? So cd, I'm gonna go to server and then node dot, and so you see the backend is listening on port 5000, and so now what we're gonna want to do is let's go out to the Postman routes that I had pre-made. Again, you can get this from the GitHub repo. It's the JSON file. Or you could just do it yourself. URL is equal to your localhost colon 5000 HTTP. You can do that yourself. So if we do like let's get all messages. Let's see if this works. Okay, so it does work. And you can see right here. Let's see if I can make this a little better to see. Okay, so you can see right here it says get from ::1. That's our IP because we're on the same computer. /message. So yeah, so it's actually /API/message, but since it's inside a router, I think that's why it's just saying that, so ignore that. But you can see that there's no messages right now, and that's normal because in our database.json there's no messages. It's an empty array. So let's get actually that's not going to work either, so let's actually create a message. So to do this, we need content, so we need an author. So click on params, I have an author here, so just like that, and then Zua, and then a body, content, and then so my message. So I'm going to make this my first post, and then I'm going to press send. Seems like we have an error. Okay, for some reason I put SHA, so it's SHA SHAH256. There's no such thing as SHA256. It's just SHA256. So I'm going to restart that. Now let's create the message, and just like that, it says Zua has created a post, and you can see that there's a post from :11 to message/create, which is good. So now let's get all messages. Send. Boom. You can see an array of objects. So we have only one object here saying, okay, this was the timestamp that we just created the message at. Has not been edited yet. The author is Zua, and then the content is my first post. And you can see the unique ID right there. And so that's perfect. That's what we want. So I'm going to create another message here. Call it this one will be from Z, or just Z, whatever. And the content is going to be, I'll just change it to like other post, hey, other post, hey. and yeah, so I changed the params to Z, and the body, the content, just like that. Send it, boom, you'll see that it sends back the object that it just created. It says Z has created a post, and you can see in our database.json file that now we have that data starting to come in. If I were to format it and zoom out just a little bit, you could see that this is essentially our database right here, and this is what's being sent back when we go to like get all messages. So you can see it's just like that. This is now the response. So this send right here, if I press send, this will like what comes back to us is this response. And so this is kind of like that circle, that data flow that we just kind of did. But now let's test all the routes before we get into linking it to the front end and actually building the front end. So let's get a specific message. So this ID doesn't exist. I'll change it for the sake of, so like something random. It's not going to work. It's going to say message was not found. You could see a 404 not found was sent back, just like intended. But let's say I want to find this post right here. I'm not going to save this. So let's say I want to get a specific post like that. You can see, boom, it found that post just like so. And yeah, get all messages works. Edit message, so let's change it to a post that doesn't exist. So just some random post. It's gonna say let's see, /message. So we had an error. Okay, I just forgot, this is not /message, this is messages, because remember I should have just made it consistent, but remember the DB, the database, is an array with the key of messages, not message. So I screwed that up again. So I'm going to restart this, and then you can see if I were to edit, yeah, it says message was not found with that ID for doing an edit. But now let's find some random thing right here. Okay, yeah, so I put in this ID for this parameter, or for this path, with a different author than who created it. So who actually created this post? This is kind of hard to look at, but I'll try to like my best to show you. So you can see who created this post was author of Z, and so remember, I'm not I'm not authorized to perform this action because my author name isn't the same, and that's what that kind of pseudo authentication was that we did earlier. And so if I were to change this to Z and have, yeah, my updated message, boom, it should change to my updated message just like that. But if I were to change like the name, and let's say like I were to go on a VPN, it wouldn't work because my IP is different or my name is different. So that's editing. Editing works now, and you can see my updated message. It updated that JSON value. And let's go delete this. Let's delete this, and boom, I'm gonna put that in here. And remember, it's not gonna work because we have that authentication. So I'm not authorized to perform this action. So I'm gonna change it to the original author's name, and it should be like yeah, it says right here Z has deleted their post, and this also says edited their post. So since I deleted it, if I were to get all messages, it should just be only one, only that entry in there. So let's get into the authors. So like all these routes work now. So I'm gonna go to authors, and remember this URL, if you're getting confused what this is just the same thing as http://localhost:5000 /API/author, just like that. Just remember, if you want, I have it predefined in the collection that I put on the GitHub. So I'm going to send this, and you should see there's only one author, and it's an array of the only one author on the platform. Get entries by author, so I have it filtered by Zua. So you can see that's my only post here, so obviously that's going to just show that up. But if I were to do Z, remember this is going to have nothing. Yeah, no messages were found from this author because this author doesn't even exist in the first place. So that wouldn't work. So let's create another message. I'll make it by the same person, Zua, and then I'll say my second post. So yeah, I'm gonna create it. You can see if I were to get all messages now, have 2 in there, and then get all authors. Only since there's only one unique author, or there's only one author, and we remove the duplicates. That's just going to be there, just like that. But let's filter by Z or by Zua. You can see that now it shows up both posts, and let's just to show you, if I were to make a new post from another person, so other post. We created that post, and I'm going to get all authors. You can see that author is now there, unique, and let's get the entries by author. It's going. Remember, we filtered by author. This route does that, so it's not going to show up that new. It's not going to show up like this, showing all of the posts. It's only going to show it based on the author, and so all of our routes pretty much work. Now that the backend is complete, let's review what we just created. Our Express API web server listens for requests from clients. For testing purposes, our client right now is Postman. The Postman client will initiate a request to the API web server we just created. The API will then send us back a response based on what the user initially requested. Hopefully now it's all starting to come together. Now let's build a user-friendly interface that allows us to interact directly with our new API. Okay guys, welcome back. We're going to be doing the front end right now. So that's the client, that's what the user gets to see and interact with. And so for this, we're just going to be using like HTML, CSS. Like, it's not going to be like React. I was going to do React, but I wanted to focus this more so on the back end. But nevertheless, it is a front end project, or a full stack project, so we have to have some sort of front end. And so that's why we're using HTML. And so if we open up our project, we have our client and our server. Let's go into our client, because we just finished the server. That's the backend web server. And so now we want to do the client. And so we have these 4 files here: actions.js, api.js, index.html, and utils.js. So before we start, I just want to say the code will be in the description below, right here. And I'll put this in the description if you can follow along what we have written beforehand. So what we want to do is let's start building the structure. So I'm going to open this folder, the client folder here, and so let's build the structure of our pretty much our UI. And so this will be in HTML. So let's start right here. So we need a doc type. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Doc type HTML, and we need HTML tags surrounding everything. We need a head tag. Put our stuff in there later. Need a body tag to have our stuff that's going to be shown. And that's all the structure. And so let's start off with writing the head. So I'm not going to be explaining a lot of this, so please look in the description below and follow along. So so in the head tag, I just copied these meta tags pretty much that make it compliant on all kinds of devices. And so we have that. Let's also have a title, and our title will just be messenger app. That'll just be the title of the page. And the style, we'll have one custom style that'll be footer, and you'll see what we do with that. So this will be ID footer, and here we'll have a position, because we're going to have a footer that pretty much lets us kind of put stuff on the bottom of our page. Left of 0, bottom of 0, and you'll see all this does is, again, just puts it at the bottom of our page. It spans it pretty much. That's what this does. It spans it across the width of the page. So that's our styling. We're going to be using Bootstrap CSS. So this is like the only custom CSS that we really have to do, I guess. So Bootstrap takes care of it. Bootstrap is a kind of like a CSS framework, a styling framework that has it all written for us, a lot of the styling. So we don't really have to get in the nitty-gritty for CSS styling, because it takes care of it for us. So let's import these libraries. Okay, so pretty much right here I copied pasted the Bootstrap CSS style sheet and the Bootstrap JavaScript. into our head tag. We also need one more thing here, and that one more thing is the Axios HTTP library. We will be using Axios to interact with our backend. It's a pretty nice library, and you'll see what we do with it later on. So again, if you don't have what I copied, it's in the description below. Under client index.html, it'll be under the client folder, and you have all the libraries. So we also need to import a couple things near the bottom of the body. That'll be the jQuery library, and we're also going to be bringing in our external custom scripts, so right here, and just have another script here that will have like internal code. We'll have that here, and we'll put that there later on. And so all this is we're taking our 4 other files here, and we're just kind of referring it into our body, and you'll see what this does and how it links together later on. So that's pretty much what we have for importing external stuff. Let's start building the actual UI. So to do this, I'm going to go over here into our body, and we're going to have a div. That'll be a div.container, and so that just puts it as a div, as a class, because this is how we're just following the Bootstrap convention. So class container has its certain properties, and just makes our life easier to follow their conventions. And H1, we're just gonna have just a heading saying messenger app. What else do we have? We're gonna have just gonna have an HR here. That'll just be like a little line. That'll be like a divider. And we're going to have an accordion. So what an accordion is, pretty much, I could show you right here. All it is kind of like, yeah, it's like this. This is what an accordion is, pretty much. Lets you open and close things, and all you have to do is follow this sample code. And it's very easy to use because there's no styling required, no JavaScript here. It's just kind of written. You could do this statically, and it's very nice how Bootstrap has it. So we're just going to be using that. So let's actually create our accordion. And so the reason of this accordion is it'll allow us to sort by authors. So I'm going to do div class is equal to Okay, so here I just pretty much have a heading. Inside of a heading tag, we just have a button that'll allow us to pretty much sort by authors. And so, I guess toggle it by authors. So here we're just going to have the inner HTML value of authors. And so this will just allow us to collapse our accordion by authors. And if you don't really understand this, just look at the Bootstrap documentation. So all I'm doing is following that. And so after here is after the H2, another div. This will be of ID collapse 1, and a class of accordion collapse, and then I have to add collapse show, and this will be the inner content of the actual accordion. And then our what is this? Label by heading 1, and also data BS parent of accordion example. So this is kind of a lot. So this will be the actual inner content of the accordion, and like I said, and so we have just the div and authors, and so here's the actual content that will be inside of that will actually be changing of the
programmatically once we get into the JavaScript. So this right here will render our authors, and so this accordion will just allow us to sort by authors. Pretty much this entire code will do that, allow us to by just changing this right here, and this would be like the collapse button to open it and close it. And let's move on. So what we have now is now what we want to do is have to refer to have us render the cards out. And so we're just, for now, since we're not actually doing that code yet, we're gonna create a card container. And so this will just be okay, and then inside of here we'll actually render the cards like I said. And so now let's also write the code for the footer. Okay, so we wrote the footer, and so pretty much we're referring to the footer, which has this code right here, or the CSS right here, so it'll be on the bottom of our page, fixed to the bottom of our page, and it'll have a button spanning to the entire width of the page that says create. And so this will be like our create message button, and let's see what it looks like right now without it actually working. Okay, so opening up the index.html file, right now what we have is the pretty much the accordion right here, and we can actually see if it's any problems. No, not really, I guess. We'll see later on. And so we have a messenger app, the divider, the accordion here that will have stuff in it soon. And we also have a create button. None of it actually works, so let's get on to the writing of it, or I guess the scripting of it, and give this website some functionality to be able to render cards. And pretty much the cards are going to have the messages. So each card will contain a message, and just like you saw at the beginning of the video. Okay, so one problem I noticed when I was just looking at this for a little longer, this isn't actually collapsing anything. I'm pressing, it does nothing, and I see why it does that. It's because there's a couple things you have to do for this button to work, a couple more properties you have to set. So for the button, we have to add a data BS parent, or not be parent, a target, and that equals the ID of the thing that we're actually collapsing. So collapse 1, and the aria expanded is equal to true. I guess that's the default. Not sure. Aria controls is equal to collapse 1, and let's actually check this out now. Okay, so here we have it now opening and closing, and that's what we want. In here we'll be able to see all the authors and press 1, and it'll sort by that later on. Okay, so now let's write the actual API wrapper. And so what an API wrapper is it's pretty much a versatile piece of code that allows us to interact with our API through any means of a client. Here we're going to be using it in our project, and so this should be a very versatile script right here, or yeah, I guess. So let's start off with this code. So I'm going to create a variable called API, and that's going to be equal to an object. And so the API is going to have an attribute called API, and this will be equal to Axios.create, and it'll have an attribute of base URL equal to HTTP ://localhost. So this will be your computer :5000. That's what the default route is to our backend. So this base URL will pretty much be equal to the backend /API. Remember, in our backend code, everything is our API is routed through /API. So I will just be putting that as the base URL. And so Axios, this variable right here, comes from this library. So that's why we can use it if we have this library imported. So it will be able to work. So now let's create the separate routes. So I'm going to open up Postman real quick, and while that's running, we're going to create our first couple of we're going to create all the functionality. Pretty much it'll be from Postman but into this API wrapper. So if we look right here into Postman, you can see that our messaging API has a ton of routes, and so what we need to do is be able to put these routes into our API wrapper so that our front end can interact and our back end can interact together meaningfully. So to do that, we're going to define our routes programmatically. So I'm going to do one called get a specific message. So let's start with this first. So in order to get a specific message, what we have to do is let's define the function. So it'll be get message, and this will be equal to a function. And the only input for a message is the ID, which is clearly right here. So this function will have one parameter, ID, and we're just going to return a promise. So, and the promise that we're going to return is this.api.get slash message. And so remember, to access it, it's slash message slash our ID, because remember URL, if it shows me the URL is pretty much just HTTP ://localhost:5000/API, and because we have that as our base URL and we are using this.api, which is just this right here, it'll allow us to do this easily. It'll allow us to kind of make these requests a lot more easily. So I'm going to pass in ID as the parameter for this, and so it'll just return this promise. But I also want to return the data pretty much, so it'll be then response and then response.data, and so that allows us to get the data of this. And you need to put a comma between each object, or between each item in an object. So next one we want to do is let's get all messages. So right here, get all messages. It'll be very similar. There's no parameter there's no parameters, because all it does is just get all messages. It's pretty straightforward. So get all messages, and this will be equal to a function with no parameters or no arguments, and we're going to return this.api.get slash message, because that's all it is. It's at API slash message. That's just the entire thing. So we're just gonna get it from slash message, and then then response. We're just gonna get response.data. And response.data, remember, I didn't even mention this, but response.data is pretty much just the JSON data that comes back from the web server. So that's all we're doing here in that promise. On to the next route. Let's do edit message. And so edit message is a little different because we need three things. So if we look in edit message, it's a put request. First of all, we need the message. It's slash message slash the ID of the message, and it has a parameter of author. And because remember, that's kind of our weird way of authenticating for this project. And so we also have a body, and that'll be the content. So what we have here is pretty much three parameters. So a function of author, content, and ID, and it'll be return this.api.put, and so it's slash message, and then it'll be the ID like I mentioned, and then question mark author is equal to the author, and so that comes from here. This variable comes there. And so now how do we throw in the content? How do we throw in, because remember, if we want to create a message, if we look in the body, it's pretty much content. It'll be like content as the key, and then whatever you want as the value, from what I remember. So how do we do that? What we do is inside of here, the second, we have we throw in the body, and so this will be new URL search param. So this native JavaScript function allows us to send off body that are pretty much URL encoded. Remember, that's what that weird thing that the middleware in our backend, that's what this is for. This just allows us to encode it within the request easily, and so we have to use this function. And so we have to put in the content in an object. So it'll be like, this will just be like content. So it'll be really like content, like hello. It'll be pretty much like this, but it'll be URL encoded so the request can fulfill. So so we did that, and so remember, we need to do the then response, and then get response.data, and we can just put this onto the new line, just like that. Okay, so let's go on with creating the other routes. So we did an edit message. Let's do delete message. So this is a delete request. So to do this, it's just message slash. It's pretty much the same. It just we don't have a content. So it'll be just like this, but we don't have content. So I'll just use that. So delete message function. I already copied that. We're not using content. We just need author and ID. Author is our way of authenticating. So is the IP, but that's more implicit. So in here we're gonna do return this .api.delete, and in here we're gonna do /message/ID, because that's what it is, and then author is equal to the author, and yeah, that's pretty much it for that. So this .api, remember this is the actual delete request. Put get is also going to be post, and yeah, just like that. So now we need to get the response.data, and yeah, we need to be able to actually take this data in that we're going to eventually use it on. So let's also do create message now. Create message. This will be function, and this will, so for create message, we can see all we need is we need a body, right? Oh, there it is. That's what I wasn't showing before. Yeah, so we need a body with content as a key, and then the values whatever you want. We need the author name, and that comes in query parameters, and yeah, that's pretty much it. We just need two things. So it'll be author and content, and this will have return this .api.post, because this is a post request. It says it right here, post. So this .api says post, and /message/create. So if you look right here, it's create, and then the author right there. I can just throw that in there, author, and just like that. And yeah, so now we have to do what we did up here with the search params, because we need to encode this data so the client can, or I guess so the script can parse it and the backend can parse it easily. And then we also need to do the .then response. And that's pretty much it for creating messages. And we're doing all the routes here today. So get all authors. So now we've moved on to, we did all these ones, and now we're going to go to these last two. And so get all authors, that's just yeah, I don't know why I didn't use a variable, but it's just /api/author, which is just /author. So all we need to do here is get all authors, function, no parameters needed, return this .api.get /author, and yeah, and then we're returning .then response data, just like that. And there's no F there, and return that for getting all authors. And the very last one, we have get messages by author, and if you see right here, get entries by author. So we're gonna just get all the messages or entries or whatever, all the posts made by a specific author. So to do that, it's the URL /ap or /author / whatever the name of the person is that you're looking for. And so you can see that's just one parameter, author. And here we're gonna do /author / the actual author name, so author, and that's pretty much it for that. I don't know what I just did, but yeah, so now if you see right here, this variable called API, this is a powerful kind of variable right here. If you were to refer to it, you have access to all of these routes, or I guess functions that allow you to interact with your backend. So I'm gonna go run my backend real quick, and I'll show you real quick. I said real quick twice, but I'm going to show you how how you can call these functions through the console. Okay, so to access our website, what we want to do is we have to run the backend web server. We have to make it so that it serves on our port. So to do that, what we need to do is go to our folder where we have our project, and we need to go into our server folder. And in here, what we want to do is open it up in your terminal or whatever. If you're on Windows, you can just type in cmd and it'll go here. And so what we want to do is just type in node and then the index file. So I can just do node dot, and you can see that the backend is now running on port 5000. And now, if you remember from our from the backend part, what we have here is we're using express static and we're serving all of our client files. So now index.html will be served through the backend web server, and it'll just be served on a default route. So what that means is we'll be able to go to localhost 5000 right there, and you can see it works, but I mean, obviously the UI doesn't work because we've not programmed that yet. So let's actually try to use some of these routes. So I'm gonna make this a little bit just so you can see it, so you can see our routes too. Okay, so let's open up the console, and here we have if you do Control-Shift-I or right-click, do inspect element, you'll get and go to the console. That's how you get to the console, and here we can do these functions. So to access, remember, to access this variable, what we want to do is API, and you can see we have all of our functions. This is pretty much our wrapper. And if we want to do like API dot, let's say, get all messages. Now remember, get all messages will just run this function and it'll return this promise. So if I were to do API dot get message like that, or actually we can't do it like that, and regardless, I was supposed to do get all messages, get all messages, and call it. There we go. You could see it performed an XHR finish loading get. So it did a get request to /API/message, and you can see that this is a promise, and you can see that the dot then, you have to, for you to actually access the data, you have to do the dot then, actually fulfill the promise. So if I were to do what we did just now, and then dot then, and in here in this callback function, what we have is pretty much our data. So I'm just going to console log our data, and you'll be able to see, oh, there it goes, dot then console.log. You can see right here we have our data right here, and so the promise is pending. We call the promise, and then dot then we have now our data, and it's the same thing as get all messages. Is that what I did? Yeah, get all messages. So it'd be the same thing, it'd be the same data. You could see this has 4, if I minimize these, yeah, you could see that there's 4 objects within this list, 4 list entries, and here you also have 4 objects within this list, and you can see that pretty much that works. I can do this with all of them through the console. I can do API dot create message, and remember, for the create message, all we need is an author and a content. So the author right here, we just have the author. Oops, did not mean to leave the console there, but yeah, create message, I'll do like Zua, and then the content, this is from this message is from the API wrapper, and just like that, and then we call it, and then dot then we can just console log, or instead of console log we can just alert, and you can see we have our, yeah, you can, it'll give you an object. Okay, so let's edit that message that we just created through our new API wrapper. So to do that, what we're going to want to do is do API.edit message. Edit has author, content, and ID. So remember, we have to do the same author. So Zua, and let's do our new content. This is the updated message from the API wrapper. Yeah, we'll just put a period, and then as one more, the ID, and so to get the ID, we can just go down here, and we have this exact message which has the ID property. So just like that, we have our ID, and it's the ID of the message, what I'm trying to say. And just throw that ID in there, and you could see I'm just gonna console.then. We're gonna do data, and so we're gonna actually use the data as a callback function, or within the callback, or of this promise. And we're gonna do alert json.stringify, just to show you. This doesn't really matter, I'm just showing you how this kind of works. And we're just gonna pretty much show the JSON data that comes back as a response from this put request, the API edit message, as a native alert, and you'll be able to see it, the raw JSON, once I press enter here. So if I press enter, you could see that the message did indeed update. You can see the edited is now true, and the content is right there, like the updated message of the wrapper, and just like that, that all works now. And you could do all of this in order to do api.get all authors. This one would just be a simple one, it doesn't have any parameters. All it is, it would just give you all the authors. There's only 2 authors, just like that, just like from Postman, but now we have it in our browser. So now what I'm going to show you is how we're going to link it up through here. We're going to be able to create a message by pressing this create button later on, and we will be utilizing this API wrapper and link to our UI. So stick around, and we're going to get to that. Okay, so before we start actually linking our API wrapper to the to our UI, we're going to need to use we need to create some helper functions. So to do that, we're going to go over to our utils.js, and this is under the client folder. And what we're going to want to do is create a variable called var utils is equal to a dictionary. And the first function we're going to make is called obj2string. And so what this function will do is pretty much allow us to convert an object to a string, pretty much, and makes it readable to whatever user. And so this will be used for displaying like all message properties to the user, and you'll see once we actually do that. So this is just going to take an object. I'm going to have just a final string here. Let final is equal to an empty string, and then we're going to iterate through the object. So to do that, there's just one easy way of doing that. Key value, just like that, of object dot entries of O, and just final plus equals the actual key colon value. This is a pretty makeshift way of actually doing this, but it works, so I'm not really complaining. And so yeah, we want to return final, and so this will just give us a really nice looking I guess parsed version of an object. Now the second function we're going to be making is prompt user, and this takes in an array of prompts. So what this function will do is allow us to have chain prompts using the native function prompt, and you'll see what that really means. So I'm going to do prompts.map, and so since prompts will be an array, we can use the JavaScript map function. So for each kind of prompt, we're just gonna prompt, and so what this function is it says it right here. It is a native JavaScript function, like through the HTML or like through the window, and this takes in one parameter and some other stuff, but just the string parameter is like what the dialog is, and you'll see how that looks like later on. So all this is going to do is return the prompts, I guess, in an array, and it's just a really clean way of writing it. And so now that we pretty much wrote that, these are the only 2 helper functions we're going to need, and what we want to do now is let's go on to our actions.js. Now this is where the meat is. This is the actual linking. This is how we're going to link our functionality to this HTML file right here. This file will make this HTML file, I guess dynamic. Well, not the file itself, but just the website dynamic. So I'm gonna have a dictionary again, or object called actions is equal to an object actions, and then we're gonna do create message first. So create message. So this function will be relating to creating a message. So for creating a message, I know for creating a message we need two things here, right? It's let me make this smaller. So create message, where is it? Yeah, create message, we need an author and content, but we're not gonna ask. We're just gonna keep this void for now. And yeah, so I'll show you what I mean. So we're gonna ask the user in this function directly. So utils dot. So we have an inputs is equal to utils dot prompt user. And so this allows us to have like the let's ask for the prompts now. So where is it? So yeah, so create message has two things called author and content. So let's ask for the first prompt. We're gonna ask a name, and then the second prompt we're gonna ask for their actual message content. And so this would just return an array of whatever they typed in for those dialogues. And this function again just allows us to chain the prompt function, and it's clean that way, and so you parse it easier. So let's actually see if they typed it in. So if inputs dot every, and then we just want to see if there is an input, then so yeah, what this does is this just checks if there is an input inside of each of this. And so if there is an input and it's all good, we want to do api.create message, and we're going to use the three dots inputs. And so what this three dots is, I think I explained it, but it kind of just applies it as the arguments, like because this is an array, and so if we put the three dots here, it'll turn into the arguments automatically, and it'll be positional by default, so we don't have to worry about like the message coming first, or the because the message, then if we ask for the message first, then that would go in as the right here, the author. But since we ask for the name first and then the message, then this can work fine. And so we're going to create the message based on that. Then we want to do .then, and then we want to take the response. And so remember, api.create message, now we're using this stuff here, and so this is the actual linking. So we're going to take the response, and we're going to do alert. We'll just alert the user, a simple native alert called created message successfully. And then what we're going to want to do is we're going to need some way to to do refresh messages, because once we create a message, we're going to need some way to kind of show the list of every single message. Because if we create a message, all it's going to do right now is just call this API call, but it's not going to change, it's not going to make any UI updates. So we're going to add a function here later that's going to refresh the messages. And since we haven't written it, I'm just going to put that to do there. So now we're going to catch if there's some sort of error. We're just going to alert it to the user. And let's say they didn't type in anything, then we're just going to give them an alert saying please enter all the fields correctly. Okay, and then that's the create message. So if we were to call this right now, this would work. I mean, we just wouldn't have a way to see it. So we haven't done the actual show the messages on the screen. So let's do that now. So this function right here, I'm gonna make this a little, I'm gonna move this. Okay. So let's refresh. Let's create a function called refresh messages, and then this has one argument called author, and I'll show you why, because you'll see. So let's say there isn't an author, like no argument was provided for that. Then we're just gonna get all authors. If there is a specific author, so if I were to go right here, so you could see if there is all authors. We could have put this in one function, but we didn't, because these are two different routes. So we're just gonna do that logic here. So if there is no author, by default we're just gonna give them all authors. So let's do that. So api.getAll, oops, get all authors, and .then, and then take the response, and what we're gonna do is for each of the authors, what we're gonna want to do is, remember that filter by user thing here that we were gonna do up here. We're gonna append it to this kind of accordion. So to do that, what we're gonna do is do this kind of weird way of doing it. We're just gonna do it directly through DOM. You could do this with React. I mean, if we did this with React, it would be a lot cleaner, but I didn't, so we're just gonna do it like this. So we're gonna take the authors. So where's the authors? Authors. Okay, so I'm just gonna make like a minor change here. I'm gonna change this to authors, just because this is where all the authors are actually gonna go. So just a little change there, just for consistency, just so it makes more sense. Because in here we're gonna append all the authors, and it wouldn't make sense if it was just author. So I'm just gonna make that change here. So authors, and in here we're gonna do document.querySelector hash authors. So we're gonna find that div right there, and what we're gonna do in that div is append every single message. So to do that, by default, or I guess first of all, we're gonna do document.innerHTML is equal to I'm gonna type in a bunch of stuff here. So filter by button class is equal to btn, and this is some Bootstrap right here, primary. And so what I'm doing in here is I'm just making it able to be sorted. It's weird how I did it, but this is just how I did it. And then in here what I'm going to do is, the main important part is, when I click this button called filter by whatever, it's going to call actions.refresh messages. Okay, and then that'll be like the function itself. And then by default, so in here by this button, it's going to be called everyone. So filter by everyone. If we just do filter by everyone, that's just every single message. So we're just going to refresh all messages. And I haven't gotten to that logic yet, but pretty much when we do this function right here, it'll just display, it'll make cards of each file, or I guess cards of each message. So everyone, and then I'll do what is it, button, and then I'm going to add a space here, a non-breaking space. To do that, you just NBSP semicolon, and hopefully I didn't screw up that syntax, but let's see. Yeah, it should be fine. This doesn't make, if it doesn't make sense, you'll see what I'm trying to do here. So now let's say we have the response now. So we're gonna do response.map. So for each response, we're gonna take the author, because remember in this function we're given an array of the authors. So now we're just gonna take the author, and so for each author, what we're gonna want to do is pretty much this same thing right here, but we're gonna append to it, and we're gonna have buttons. And so we're gonna have one button, and then this will have a class equal to btn. Let's see, so btn secondary. So that'll just make it gray. And onClick is equal to actions.refresh messages. And so since this is a specific author, and since we're at some iteration, what we're going to want to do is just throw the author in there. And you'll see, so right now we're doing the logic if there isn't an author, and when there is, which will be over here, then we're gonna actually do that. We're gonna do that logic. You'll see. Just give me a sec here. Let me write this out. So that'll be. Let's see. So yeah. So that's that, and then that. Okay, and then we make the actual content of the button the author. So just like that. And this is a really inefficient solution because you're kind of rendering this on the client. I guess it's good for server side, but React could have done that better, so it's whatever. And then we're just going to add a non-breaking space here. And yeah, so let's see if I screw that syntax up. I guess we'll see sooner on. So yeah, so this just allows us to kind of, every time we, like, you'll see actually. So we did the logic, if no author is provided, we're just going to create a bunch of buttons that allow us to filter by whoever. And now if there isn't, or actually let's handle this too. So if, let's say there is an error, let's tell the user, we're just going to give them that raw error. Okay, and then let's see here. So that's closed. Okay, and then what we want to do now is we want to do API, and so we want to get all messages, or we want to get all messages based on if there is an author. If they gave us an author, we want to just get messages. We want to refresh messages based on whoever that author is. That's like the sorting thing. So let's say there is an author. We're gonna do get messages by author, and so that's this function right here. Otherwise, if there isn't, then we want to do get all messages. Okay, so, and then so that'd just be API dot. Let's say there is an author, the API dot get messages by author. If there isn't, get all messages. Boom. And then we want to throw in the author. And if let's say let's say there is an author, or there is not an author provided in this function, then it'll still throw in this like parameter. But since we don't have anything in get all authors, it's just not going to do anything. So we're just going to leave that call there because we need to call it anyways. It's fine. So then response, we want to take the response and do stuff with that. Document dot let's see, document dot, what are we doing, query selector, and then we want to take the cards. So we want to find the cards body, so that'd be here. We want to take this and append all of our cards in here. So to do the actual appending, we're gonna do, or first we're gonna reset it. So let's say like we keep on refreshing our messages. If we don't reset our messages, and to reset it, you just set it to an empty string. But if we don't reset it, then it's just gonna keep creating a bunch of cards every time you refresh your messages. So this is like the reset messages. Like on your page, it's not gonna reset like on the back end. It's just gonna reset it for you every time you refresh. And then response, so for each card that there is, or for each message, for each I could have used map, but I didn't. MSG, for each time we do that, we're going to do query selector hash cards dot inner HTML plus equals, so that's the appending. What we're going to want to do is create a ton of cards here. So we're going to create a card. So we haven't actually done that yet. So I'm going to go over to utils.js, and we have to create the card function to actually generate a card. So I'm going to be speeding through this because a lot of it is just HTML, but let's set it up. So in our utils file, I'm going to create a function called card, and this will have some stuff in here. So it'll be an object that has author, content, timestamp, edited, and ID. And if this object looks a bit familiar, good, because it should. This is just going to be the message object that we get from the database. This is what we're actually going to be throwing in here. So this will be like utils.card, and then we're going to throw the actual message object, because remember, every time we get all messages by author or all messages in general, it's going to return an array of objects. So, and that array of objects is going to consist of the message objects from our backend. So that's what this is going to do. So let's actually write this function now. So a lot of this is just going to be Bootstrap. So I'm just going to return kind of a string here, and Okay, so you can see right here, I'm going to start throwing in some of the object, I guess, properties in here. So you can see that this cards will be dynamic based on the actual proper or the arguments given. So I'm going to continue on. So here I'm going to actually throw in the content now, since we're under card text. So this is where we're going to throw in the content of the message itself. Here I'm going to throw in the timestamp, and we're also going to throw in if it's edited or not. So if it's edited, what we're going to want to do is edited question mark. If it's edited, then we're going to have in italics. We're going to say edited, like how Discord does it. If you edit a message, it'll like turn italic, saying that this message was edited. Otherwise, we're just not going to say anything. Okay, so here I'm going to do some other stuff. So actions dot we haven't actually got to some of these functions, so I'm going to stop right here for now. I just wanted to show that we're creating this function, and so we haven't actually created all these these functions yet. So I'm going to just type them out. So we have one function that we're going to create called more info, and that'll just be using the get message from our API wrapper. So in here, this requires one parameter called the ID, and so since we're given the ID here, we're just going to throw that in here conveniently, just for us to use. I also forgot to put the a quote here. So here I'm going to do edit message, and for edit message, you can see right here we need author, content, and some other stuff. And so what we really need for edit message is this is not the same as this function. Remember, this is the actions, and so we haven't defined that. But in the in there, we're going to just ask the user for their name for authentication's sake, and their the message that they want to update, and then in here we're just going to throw in the ID of this current message, just so we keep that kind of state clear, and it allows us to keep like the values consistent. And so you'll see how that works, and like how that works for us. Okay, now I'm going to do the one for deleting a message. So for delete message, we need an author and an ID. So I'm in the actual actions.delete message. So we haven't defined that yet, but in there we're just going to have one parameter, that's the ID, and that'll be contained within the actual creation of the card. But we're going to be asking the user for their name just for authentication in this action file, so we don't have to bother to throw it in there. And remember, we're doing this, the weird asking for the name every time just for authentication, just so we don't have to really, just so we have something for the kind of way to use authentication without really having authentication, because I wanted to avoid doing that in this video. And within each card, I'm just going to have a kind of a break between them. And so what we want to do now is, if you noticed, I have some things in here called like pencil logo, trash can logo. So here I have SVG kind of that pretty much you can get from the repo it's just an SVG. So right here I have the SVG for the what is this, the pencil. So I'm just going to copy that. Pretty much what it is just literally the pencil logo in SVG. It allows us to kind of embed that in the HTML itself, so it's pretty nice. And then the last one is the trash can logo, which is right here. So you can get everything between the SVG tags and just throw that in there. And that's pretty much it for this. This is not going to work right now because we haven't actually created some of these functions. Like we haven't created delete function for actions.delete function. Remember, we have API.delete message, but we need actions.delete message because that's how we're going to actually do this. So this would work now. And so what we want to do for this is, so we're appending it each time each card or each message we have into the cards, and that'll be kind of our output. And let's actually handle this. So if something bad happens, we're going to alert the user. And that should be it for the refresh messages. Let's add one more or a couple more. We have 3 more functions. More info. So remember that was that one. Oops, that wrong place. Remember that was that one function in here. Where is it? More info right here. So pretty much what this does is once we press this button that says more info, it'll give us the object. So we're going to make a request to the get message endpoint or this function and just get that object, and we're going to parse it for the user to be able to view it. So you'll see what that looks like right now. So let's do that. So more info function. This has one called ID because remember it, for here we can just keep it the same, just have one parameter, and that'll be built in the actual card itself, so we don't have to like really worry about it because it'll just kind of be thrown in every time we refresh messages. We won't have to be like asking for it. So we do API.getMessage, and let's see. So this is get message. So for that, it's just one parameter. That's the ID. We're given that parameter, so just gonna throw that in there. And then we want to do stuff with this data. So data, and what we're gonna want to do is, remember I said we want the user to be able to see it. So see this, the more info. When they press more info, they're gonna get more info about the message. It'll see if it was edited, the time stamp, the IP it was under, and that was more of a hidden data, but it's a part of the message object, so they'll be able to see that by pressing it. So we're just going to alert. If we were to alert data right now, remember data would be the actual message object. So let's actually use that helper function that we created called object to string. So we're going to just do utils.obj2string and throw in the actual object, and so the user will be able to see it in a parsed, kind of easy to understand way. And I'm also going to have a I also want to handle this, so .catch alert. We'll just alert the user if something bad happens. And I just realized this has to be data, or it can be object because it is technically the object. Just make sure they're the same. And so that's pretty much it for the more info. When they press that button right here, when they press it, they'll be given an alert with the message information. So let's do edit message. And so this just has one kind of parameter here. We're going to ask, so it says right here we need 3, but we're going to ask the user for just like we did for create message, but we're gonna ask it here for just so we don't have to or just so a way we can what's it called, just we can keep asking the user for their name because that's our way of authenticating. And so let's do that. So edit message, we're gonna do API.edit message, and here we're just gonna call utils.prompt user, and we're going to ask them for their name. So this is just that inputs kind of from up here. We just throw it in here now because it's fine. It just makes it, I guess, shorter. Edited message, so we're going to ask them for their name, and so that'll be the author, and then the edited message will be the content. And so make sure this is positional. And then after, we're going to ask them, or we're going to throw in the ID, and remember the ID is built in for whatever message they're referring to. So whenever they press like edit message for this, they're going to press this pencil icon, which is nested between the button tags. They're going to press it, and then it'll call this function right here. And you can see the ID is built in, so they don't have to type in the ID. It's just kind of inherent for whatever button they press. It's unique to that button, and so that gets rendered whenever we call that. Whenever we call refresh messages, because that's when utils.card gets ran. And we're gonna have to call that too later on because we haven't done that. And so I made a note here. This is called the spread syntax, in case this doesn't make sense. The ... I didn't know about it for a while too, but it's pretty nice, versatile. This is called spread syntax right here. Okay, and we want to do stuff with this, so we're going to do .then response, take the response, and here we're going to actually call this .refresh messages. And so what this does is when they edit a message, once they edit a message, nothing's going to happen, because refresh.message we're gonna call this every time every time it loads in, or every time, if we go right here, every time the what's it called, like the first time we come into this website, it's gonna render everything, but right now it won't, because we never called refresh messages. So here what I'm gonna want to do is just call it for the first time, actions.refresh messages. And so once we load in the site, it's going to make that, it's going to render all the messages for the first time. But if we edit a message, nothing's going to happen. So we have to call this again. So we have to refresh messages just so we get an updated, just so we can see that our message updated. And then we're going to alert edit, we're going to tell the user edited message. Okay, and then we want to catch this. If there is an error, we're just going to tell them. And so that's it for edit message. We actually don't do anything with response, so I guess that's fine. I thought we were. So now the last one we have is delete message. You can see that right here, actions.delete message. If the user presses this trash can button right here, then it's going to delete that message. So for deleting, we need we need author and an ID, and so we can just ask the user for their author, or for their name, and then the ID is built in. So let's do that. So we just need one parameter, or one argument, delete message, and then function ID, and then here I'm going to do api.delete message and utils.prompt user. We're just going to ask them for their name. We're not going to ask them anything else because we have our information. We only need that piece of information, and the ID is inherent. And then then it'll just be like, it'll literally be this. We're just going to copy this. So we want to refresh the messages after we delete it, because after we make that delete request in our database, that entry is going to be gone. So we want to refresh it and make sure our UI is updated or in sync with our backend. And so that's what this allows us to do. And then instead of edited, we're just going to say deleted message. And that's pretty much it for that. And so let's finish we have to finish the utils. We did finish that. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Let's go run this in our backend now, and see if we have any problems, any errors. So I'll see you then. Alright, so now that we actually finished this project, let's actually run the web server and see what our UI looks like, and let's test the functionality. So to run our backend server, remember, we just have to open our project folder, and then we can go to server, and this is where we're actually running the server. So here I'm going to open up command prompt. To do that, just go here and then type in cmd. It's one way of doing it. And then just do So it'll do the index, and you can see our backend is listening on port 5000, just like that. And so now what we want to do is open up your web browser. Now let's go to this port right here. I'm going to go to localhost 5000, and just like that, you can see this works, I guess. Clearly there's some things I want to change, but let's see. So you can see we have our messages loaded in from the backend. So if I were to go to the let's open it up here. Alright, so opening up my database.json, you can see all the messages here. You can see it's clearly just like how it is on here. There's some styling issues, but let's just first let's address those. So more info, I want that to be this teal color. So to do that, I'm just gonna go find more info here, or that would be actually in the utils, because that's where we're rendering the card. So within each card, we just have to change this from a button warning to button info, I believe. And refreshing that, there we go, it's teal. Okay, so you can see that this all works now, but, or at least, I guess you can see that the cards actually show up, but I don't like how it squishes together. This is weird. I want each, I guess, card or message to be its own row. So to do that, let's figure out why this is doing that. So let's go to our index.html, and in here we're actually rendering the cards within this div. We want this to be inside of another div, so that each element can be styled with a margin bottom of 50 pixels, so it can have that, and it'll be inside of the row, which is a Bootstrap kind of layout thing that they have going on, the grid that they have set up. So we're gonna do div hash cards and let our cards render in this div, and you can see just like that, our thing looks a lot more clean now, and so each row, I guess, has its own message, and you can see it's responsive too, which is nice, and that's a very nice addition to Bootstrap. So let's test out the actual functionality. You can see the accordion works. In here we have each of our authors, so that's that get all authors, and you can see the actual requests going out. If we were to just if I go to network and filter by XHR and I refresh the page, you can see we have author and message. These are two requests that are done initially, and if you look right here, the initial request is called from this client script, so actions.refresh message, and in here it's not letting me, right here, well, it's right here, so refresh messages, we're running this has two API calls, so we're not giving the author initially, there's no author, so this is null, and so this will run, get all authors will run, and that's this request right here. You can see that this request plays out, and we're given this array back, and then we have message, and that's this right here, and so this will be get all messages because there's no author provided. And so that allows for us to, I guess, that's like the onload logic. And so let's filter by I guess users. So try to zoom this out just a little bit. Oh, no, never mind, that's not gonna work. Okay, so let's actually test some of this functionality. We're gonna filter by Zua, this author right here. So remember, if we look right here, okay, so you can see right here, this is where these buttons get rendered. So you could see initially we don't give an author, so that's what that call is right here. We're calling this function, it'll run this function, and here we don't give an author initially on load. So we do get all authors, and then here we're setting the filter by whoever, and then this is binded to the same function, and then right here you can see for each author, I guess, so this is right here, this would be for each author given, we'll have a button, and if we, and that button, every time you press whatever respective button for whatever iteration you're at, you have this being called, you refresh the messages based on the author given. So then what you do is, let's say you press it, then this function right here will call it will not run this, but it will call this right here, and it'll be, since we are given the author, it'll be get messages by author. We'll throw in the author, and it'll filter the messages by the author from the server. And so that's pretty nice from there. It's already binded when it's rendered on startup. So you can see right here, if we were to filter by Z, you can see that a post request or a get request to Z goes from there. You can see right here, HTTP localhost 5000/API/author/Z. If I were to just do this get request on my just browser here, you can see we just get the JSON just like that, and you can see the response would be identical. And so then the script parses that, and what you can see right here is when you press that button, it'll refresh the messages, it'll render all the messages, all the cards, it'll create a card for each message from that specific author, because we're doing get messages by author. And so that's pretty nice. So you can see Zua, it'll do it for Zua, it'll do it for Z, and if you want everyone, it'll do the default, it'll just do /message. It won't have another parameter to just be for get all messages. This everyone would filter by everyone, or it'll filter by all. So yeah, let's press more info here. If I do more info, you could see we have kind of a parsed, shows us the properties for this post. So you can see the IP is default for the same machine. You can see the ID as whatever it was in the database. Edited, it was false, was not edited, and it doesn't say the author is Zua, and it shows the content. That's pretty nice. We can edit this, so let's say my name is Z. So we know the author is Zua, so we're probably going to get some sort of authentication error. So I'm going to keep going with this. Let's say the edited message is my edited message. You can see we have status code failure 401. That means we're unauthorized, and if you remember that from the that was our makeshift way of authenticating. You have to have the same name to edit the same message, and so we see that works fine. You could see the 401 request right here, and that works fine. But let's try to actually edit it now. So my name is Zua, and it also checks the IP if that's the same too. Another way of authenticating. So you can see that our makeshift authentication works. Let's edit the message. So my edited message, just like that, and you could see it edited the message, and right there you could see all these requests going through. And you could also, I have not been showing the backend, but you can see that the backend will show all of these requests. It also logged out. Zua has edited their post, and that works fine. And then every time they edit their post, remember it calls it'll refresh all messages. That's what these two are here for. You remember that from the actions. Now let's delete this. So I'm going to delete the same message. Let's do a different name. It'll right off the bat, it'll just say error. I'm going to give it my name. You could see it deleted the message, and boom, it is gone, forever gone. What else is there? We can edit this post. Let's try editing a separate post, a different one. This post is edited, and press OK. Edited message, OK, and you can see that changed right there. And you could also see that edited logic, which was built in right here, if I get right here, you can see if it was edited, and so that comes from the actual building of the card, and this object comes from the database when we call it right here. And so that's like this message object comes from the response, and so that's what comes from our backend. And so now you can see that this right here is pretty much how we link it together, our UI and our backend. And so that's the main flow of this, or that's like the main concept of this project. That's what I wanted you to understand in this project, how we link our backend and our front end, and how you can see, so this is like receiving data, because all we're doing is making a GET request to our API, and then this is sending data to the backend. So that's what that's the kind of data flow that I mentioned in the beginning of this video. You can see that works perfectly, and that's pretty much it. I mean, let's see if there's anything else. I mean, oh yeah, I forgot to create a message. Totally forgot. So let's create a message. Of course, that does not work. So let's figure out why creating a message does not work. Okay, so for creating a message, I forgot to. Well, we have to bind the actions.createMessage to the actual function that we created. So we have to bind that to the UI. And so to do that, we're just going to do onClick is equal to actions.createMessage, and you can see just like that, we have our function. We don't need any parameters because we're just going to ask the user straight up from this line. And so let's refresh this. I'm going to create. You can see, okay, what's my name? Let's do something else like other guy, or let's say anon, and then let's have a message. This is a message. You can see created message successfully. You could say anon has created a post in our backend log. If you see that right here, and you can also see the post request to/message/create. Just like that. That's pretty much what we wanted. Let's press OK, and you could scroll to the bottom. Let's see. Actually, did it even show up? Okay, so it didn't refresh it when we created it. Let's go over here. Create message needs to have like, we need to call this dot refresh messages. Yeah, we need to call that at the very end. Let's see. So actually, we call it if it works, if the person did it right. So we're gonna put that there. Refresh this. I'm gonna delete anon. So my name is anon, and the message deleted. It's gone now. I'm gonna create one. Anon. Message is back. Created successfully, and you can see right here automatically gets thrown in there. Just forgot to add that. So this just kind of refreshes the messages. That's what it'll call this function, and it'll do all that jazz again. And that's what we wanted. I mean, you can see that I can edit it now. Anon, edited message, and it changes just like that. And it's using the REST API. And so that's the essence of this project. I mean, you can see all of the timestamp shows up, and it's in this polished UI. I guess the inputs aren't polished, but I did that just for clarity's sake. And you can see all this stuff works. That's pretty much all I have for this video. Hopefully you understand how the data kind of flows together in full stack development projects, since these are very intricate systems. I mean, like the fact that you have a front end and you have to design the front end and then link it to the back end and make sure that they communicate properly, so the front end can talk to the back end, the front end can send data to the back end, and then give a response based on what the front end sent, and vice versa, right? So it's very important. I hope you have some sort of a better clarity behind these things, because they can be difficult. There's a lot of moving pieces in these, and they can be tricky. So hopefully this project makes sense. Hopefully it was digestible. It's a very long video. I'm sorry, but I appreciate you guys for watching or sticking through if you're still here. And thank you. Thank you for watching. Goodbye now.